That would help a lot to the work, not only for AFC, but to the political work generally. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think that's, thank you very much, an excellent suggestion. As always, the suggestions of these kinds is a question of resources, and one would have to consider whether such a newsletter would best be done, whether it should be done on an individual branch basis or whether a European-wide basis. In fact, Bertil Häggman of Sweden is already publishing such a newsletter, and I think this is an important step forward. But perhaps Stefan has some additional observations on this important point.
To publish material, it's one thing, but to make people read it and for people to distribute it, it's another. Very often you have publication of material on so many subjects, and regrettably, very often people don't even read it. Whilst I agree with publishing material in order to publicize an issue which the AFC stands for, but I think that those members of the branches in the United Kingdom in particular, if they would care not only to be a member of the branch, and I'm sure they are not just members of the branch, but if they would, not every day, perhaps not every week, but in their place of work, wherever they are, whether in their clubs or pubs or offices or factories, speak to their next door neighbors, to their friends and colleagues, and publicize it in that way if you have no literature to give it to them. And I think if a person speaks to a person and speaks from the heart, then very often the news is accepted, statement is accepted that much better than via a piece of paper, although I do not condemn, as I say, literature. But it is a responsibility of us all, not only the members of the EFC, but all of us who care about others, who represent nations from behind the Iron Curtains and Soviet Union, and we have one enemy in common. Therefore, let us speak and speak again, because that is the way to win friends, to win support in a similar way. And I'm in no way trying to be derogative when I say that when a priest on a Sunday repeats his sermon from the pulpit to his congregationists time and time again, those people who attend churches know very well indeed what the priest have said to them on a Sunday evening or Sunday afternoon. And as I said earlier on, we are those apostles with a small a, that we should preach and we should speak, we must never stop it.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Do we have another question? Mr. Thompson.
I have a number. Honourable President, you may not know, but the ABN session earlier on hinged onto your question time. My apologies. Few things came up. A young lady from United States of America said that it's time to rejuvenate our membership. A very sincere speaker from Bulgaria, Dr. Doshev, said, our flight is our common problem. And from all the reports that I heard this morning, at various stages, back came the same what our Honourable Stefan Terlecki said, it's our common problem. And all I would like to say in assisting the discussion, sorry John to interfere with the other side, is that we really got to take back and think for ourselves, how can we progress our flight? I may offer half solution when I say, and I mean what I said, I think it's already discussed an hour or so ago, that in Bradford we bring the sum total of our flight as a common discussion with common power and purpose, and we feel that we don't have to influence people, we are there, we are seen, and we can do things. The same transpired from reports from Canada and in fact the United States of America. We have to do things. It's no good having conferences, having meetings and having resolutions. We have to go out and do things. I hope I can assist in generating a bit of discussion in this direction.
Well, thank you very, very much. It's most helpful. I think at this stage, I'd like, because I want to make a small presentation, perhaps we could have one more question now. We could go to the presentation, and the lady, I think, wants to ask a question. Yes. Then we resume the discussion after we have the election of the other contributors.
I only should like to ask, for example, if we changed our work. For example, for 2 months ago, Saharov's son was hunger striking. And you know, I have made several hunger strikes, and I wanted to help him and make a hunger strike in Copenhagen or in Stockholm. And I phoned to several organizations and I said, we must cooperate, you know. And if something very important thing happens in the world, it's not good that only one person makes, for example, he makes hunger strike in United States. It had been very good if somebody had hunger strike in London, one in Bonn, someone in Stockholm. At the same time, I think it's very good if we make in every country one person. If something happens, we can phone or write to each other that we can make actions at the same time. Don't you think that's very important? Because it's very difficult. I have made many hunger strikes, and when I was in Madrid in a security conference, I had to make paper one day for Polish people. I was Polish. Made prisoner dress on, and I was Polish. The other day I had to be Swedish because the submarine came on the rocks. And the third day had to be an Estonian in different clothes. It's impossible, you know. It was very good because I speak Spanish. I had lived 13 years in South America, and I could in every newspaper, but it was very confusing, you know. One day Polish, another day Estonian. And next year, for example, when the human rights are coming up again, we must organize. And I was in the Baltic cruise by the boat, and I should like that we had a bus, and we make a cruise by bus, peace and freedom cruise by Europe, because there is no peace without freedom, but not without with speeches. And for example, by Bonn, we can cruise by Bonn, London, 3 weeks the summertime. And we can, for example, not only speeches, we can take our folklore, our dances, our folk dresses on, and make it very good that all nations together. We can't be separate islands. We must work together. I have worked for Polish, and I hope that some Polish people one day can help us and be Estonian, because we have the same destiny. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think because we must move on, and I know that you would wish this presentation to take place. Can we go to that now? Then we'll have the elections, and then we can resume our discussion.
Yep.
But it is a great honor for me to read on your behalf this scroll which the President of the ABN himself, the Honourable Jaroslav Stetsko, will present to General John Singlaug. And it reads, Award of Merit presented to General John K. Singlaug for outstanding support of the liberation struggle in Ukraine and other subjugated nations for national independence and human rights. Signed, Yaroslav Stetsko, Prime Minister of Free Ukraine, President of ABN, London, 22nd of November 1985. Sir. This is the ridiculous after the sublime. The General Jack, as I call him, a tie of the House of Commons, Honorary MP Jack for a stirring speech. I wish my colleagues could speak as directly, as forthrightly as yourself, and one to my friend and colleague, Mr. Guillermo Kirkpatrick. Gentlemen. Well, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, we have business to conclude, and I would like at this point to pass the proceedings over to the chairmanship of Madame Stetsko.
Honorary members of the Presidium, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to make a suggestion that our most able President until now, Honorable John Wilkinson, be re-elected as the President of European Freedom Council. There is a suggestion of the European Freedom Council Preparatory Committee that the members of the Executive and the Honorary Presidium be re-elected in full, and that some others, very until now able co-fighters and supporters of the idea of European Freedom Council be added, and those whom we would like to suggest to be added is Honorable Stefan Terlecki. It is our great pleasure to suggest Sir Frederick Bennett, Member of British Parliament. The member of the Swedish Parliament is supporting the idea of European Freedom Council for many years, but is unable to come here, is Honorable Professor Hugo Hegeland. We would suggest him to be elected as a member of the Executive Board as well. Further, we would like to suggest Mr. Bertil Hegman, Chairman of the Institute for a Political Psychological Freedom Campaign, to be elected to the Executive Board member. And the last suggestion, we would like to suggest Professor Leo Manino, President of the Italian Archaeological Society, who has sent his speech here, who has been working hard for many years for European Freedom Council, but due to his sudden illness was unable to come here. We would like to suggest him also to the members of the Executive Board. We would like that the Honorary Presidium, as it was until now, His Royal Highness Otto von Habsburg, Honorable Jaroslav Stechko, former Prime Minister of Ukraine, Honorable Manuel Fraga Iribarne, Chairman of the Alianza Popular of Spain, be re-elected members of Honorary Presidium. Thank you very much. I'm sorry very much, but I didn't mention very distinguished members who were suggested to be re-elected. Honorable Guillermo Kilpatrick, Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of Alianza Popular from Spain, and Honorable Ursula Appel-Krone, member of German Parliament, who is now at the party Congress and was unable to come to be re-elected. And since my name was there, I omitted this list. Slava Stechko.
Well, Madam Stechko, thank you very much indeed. It's a great honor to be re-elected by acclamation and a privilege to serve you. We have a big challenge ahead, but I think from the names that you have read out, we can all recognize that it's a formidable team, great capability, and people who have proved themselves in their commitment to our cause. And above all, it's a great delight for all of us who have to serve the EFC, that you, Madame Stechko, should be able to continue to lend us your wholehearted backing, because without your organizational flair, your drive, and your charming personality, events like this conference will be very hard to achieve. Thank you very much. We have, ladies and gentlemen, 10 minutes before the coffee break, and we were having a fruitful discussion. I think Mr. Hardwick wanted to make a question or put a point.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since the General has not received a question yet, I would like to put one to him.
Come to the microphone so they can be recorded, I think. We're on the proceedings.
Yes, I would like to put a question to the General. If I may recap, at a Captive Nations meeting, Washington in July the 21st, 1982, and I will take a little out of context, but your speech was on the Soviets. And what you did say is, we will be forced to meet coercive threats with increased oppression, with eventual surrender to avoid a possible nuclear war. The Soviets will have won the conflict in a manner recommended by the ancient Chinese military scholar Sun Tzu in 350 BC, advised the best general, and I quote this, the best general was he who avoided the use of violence and achieved his conquest by the surrender of his enemy. Could you enlarge upon that, if you still believe in that philosophy?
I think that that is the essence of the whole concept of psychological warfare. Sun Tzu, who was the first of the great military philosophers, preached the idea that if you are able to demoralize your enemy, if you can plant a fifth column in his ranks, if you can terrorize him into believing that surrender is better than fighting, you have truly succeeded. And this, of course, is what we've been subjected to in the last 40 years, an increasing use of terrorism by the Soviet Union, an increased threat of conventional arms, an increased threat of nuclear arms. And today, the reason that the Soviet Union is making such a major effort to kill the Strategic Defense Initiative is that the defense against the nuclear threat has been so successful for the Soviets in causing nations to want to appease them. It would take the teeth out of that and give us a better chance of survival, give us a better chance of launching what I call the truth offensive. It is much easier to sell the truth than it is a lie. The Soviets and their surrogates, clearly it is the case in Central America today, have been selling a lie and getting away with it. At far less resources, we can tell the truth, but we must make that effort. To answer the question, yes, I still believe that the Soviet goal is to get us into a psychological position where we will feel that it is better to be red than dead. That's the essence of the concept.
The gentleman behind you, sir. No, the gentleman behind, whom I first. Thank you.
I would like to put question to General Sinclair. He mentioned in his excellent speech all the nations and organizations who are helping in Nicaragua training. But I wonder whether he doesn't know or whether he has some reason to omit the major terrorist trainers, the major communist ideologists training people in Europe are Yugoslav communists. And I am sure if General Singlav did go a little bit further, he would find few Yugoslav training in Nicaragua. Yugoslavia is the haven of every terrorist that's driven away from the West. Where did you go? In Belgrade. I would like him to answer me that. Why was it Yugoslavia omitted?
Well, it was not inadvertent. I do not now have evidence of any significant numbers of Yugoslavs. I am fully aware of what you say, that Yugoslavia has been a refuge because Yugoslavia has been granted the unusual opportunity to have communications with the East and the West. People, there are flights, ships going from the West into Yugoslav ports and airfields, and of course there's free travel from there into the Soviet Union or into the East Bloc. It's the gateway, and they have, as we know, sheltered the leading terrorists of the world, most recently Abbas, who even now is recognized as the leader of the recent hijacking of the Achille Lauro ship. I agree with you, but I just don't happen to have any current intelligence that says there are any significant numbers of Yugoslavs in Nicaragua at the present time.
Thank you very much. Could I have the question at the back, at that side, please?
David Neil Smith, Great Britain. Now, one of the things that slightly concerns me is what may be the lack of liaison with like-minded associations, who believe in everything we do. And I am also chairman of the North West London Freedom Association, and that has branches throughout the country, and one or two activities have included showing Let Poland Be Poland, which was not shown in this country on television at all, and that was a disgrace, I think. And also meetings with Russian dissidents, for example, Julia Voznesenskaya. So the first point is a question about liaison with the Freedom Association in this country, and perhaps between EFC branches and Freedom Association branches on, say, joint events up and down the country. The second organisation is the International Society for Human Rights, and I believe that its parliamentary representative in the British section is David Atkinson. So I hope there can be liaison between Mr. Wilkinson and Mr. Atkinson on some of the issues discussed here today. I understand that they are doing research, for example, on what's going on in Nicaragua, so they may have further information on that, a joint pooling of information. And also, of course, I helped produce in research with the publication Refugees from Afghanistan, which is on sale at the back here. Another question which is very serious is, I believe that the monitoring of we must have a system of monitoring the media, and there have been complaints that the media, in the way they portray the Soviet Union and the United States as sort of equal superpowers, the two superpowers. This is what is said on the BBC News all the time. And I have a specific question to put on that. Yesterday morning, while watching live the Geneva Summit press conferences, I thought it was disgraceful how on the BBC, and I watched all of it, Mr. Gorbachev's press conference was shown every minute live. Mr. Schulz's press conference was not shown live at all, and there were only snippets mentioned by the presenter Sue Lawley at the end. I want an official protest from this conference on that. Thank you.
I think our representative from the UK has raised some exceedingly important points, which I would at least like to give an interim answer to. On the first one, the more that the European Freedom Council can cooperate with and liaise with other organizations that are fighting communism and seeking the values that we also espouse of freedom under the law and of democracy, the better. And I would be delighted to talk to David Atkinson, whom I know well. We serve in the Council of Europe together, and he has a particular interest and expertise in the plight of the Christian churches behind the Iron Curtain, which is very valuable. We had yesterday, for example, someone from Keston College here. I don't know if we still have today, but we did then. And it's a very, very important aspect of our work and a great inspiration, quite honestly, behind our cause. As for the selective nature of the reporting of the respective press conferences at the Geneva Summit, I'll be very pleased to talk to the gentleman afterwards so he can give me more precise facts. Then maybe Stefan or I, or both of us, can write to the governors of the BBC and take this matter up on your behalf. Stefan would like to speak on that.
In relation to the media itself, I am very concerned also because I watched for approximately half an hour the BBC morning broadcast and listening to Gorbachev speaking in Russian and then listening, I dare say, a Russian interpreter speaking in English. There were some words omitted which could have been put into English and made better listening and reading what Gorbachev was saying, which I felt that was wrong. And there were certain issues which I felt Mr. Gorbachev was playing into the hands of the Soviet citizens through its media, and very cunningly, very cleverly, very shrewdly attacking indirectly the West and United States in particular. Having said that, I again appeal to every member here and pass it on to your friends and colleagues and neighbors that if you watch the media, or for that matter if you read the press, and there is something in it that you feel is not balanced, then I would urge you all to first and foremost write to the members of parliament, lobby them and complain about it. I also feel that you should write to the Director General of the BBC complaining as well. I also feel that through clubs, through workplaces, offices or factories, you can also organize a petition, because all you need 10, 50, 20, 30 people, whether on a Saturday evening in the club or in your place of work, to ask people to sign the petition once you got the headline as to what the petition is for. And in that form, once you start lobbying your members of parliament, once you start writing to the Director General, once you start sending the petitions, then I'm convinced, if not in total, but some of the correspondence will be listened to, will be perhaps answered as well, and that is the way to disagree, if you like, and try to have a balance in the press and in the media in particular. Now, you may well say, but I am not accustomed to write letters to the members of parliament or to the Director General, or I simply cannot do it. Well, then I would suggest that there should be within the clubs or within the branches at least somebody who can form a letter of approximately 25 words or 50 words at the most, to form a letter, and then another person top and tail it as though he or she is sending that letter himself or herself. And again, I think that John will agree with me that members of parliament are bombarded with many letters, with a lot of lobbyists, and believe me that there comes a time, whether we like it or not, we have to take notice, and we do take notice from the people that write us. For example, in the present situation, we've got quite a lot of teachers writing to us. We've got quite a lot of people who wrote to us about television, televising the House of Commons. We have quite a lot of letters. I've got hundreds of letters, lobbyists and individual letters about the Sunday opening in the United Kingdom. Now, I, as a member of parliament, do take note of those letters and that correspondence. And therefore, I would respectfully remind you, please, this is not for any particular individual person's benefit, but for the benefit of us all, that we write to our members of parliament, that we lobby our members of parliament, that we write to the Director General of the BBC, send petitions, send letters, even to the press. And I think collectively, I am convinced that in the end, we will have more balance of reporting than we have up till now.
Thanks, Stefan. We have to, I think, run on a little bit. We started somewhat late after lunch, and I know that a lot of people want to get in, and we have a brief statement which I'd like to read to you. The gentleman, the back of the left there, my left, your right.
I am Reverend Tommy Wallace, an American living in Honduras. I represent the Mosquito Indian, which General Singlug has been talking about. I would like to state one thing before I ask the question, and that is the gentleman that mentioned Yugoslavia. My wife and I were in Nicaragua before the war, during the war, and after the war. The children in the First Baptist Church in Managua, who up until the war were very Christian, as soon as the war was won by the Sandinista and everybody started fleeing, they turned upon their own pastor, who had fled once before from Cuba, and they asked him, why is it that you are fleeing now from freedom? Why can't you support this revolution? Why can't you support a type of government that Yugoslavia has? So right from the beginning, the young people in the First Baptist Church were being indoctrinated by the Yugoslavians on some manner. I do not know exactly how it was done, but they said, we want Nicaragua to be a state with the same type of government as Yugoslavia. They do not have it now. It's more like Russia in itself. But I wanted to comment about this particular point. The question that I have is this. If a Mosquito Indian who speaks 3 languages, English, Mosquito, and Spanish fluently, and is a very able and capable person to talk for her country, would the members of Parliament of each of the countries that are represented here, would they offer this person a chance to speak out on what is happening in Nicaragua and her country in a way in which information like General Singlug has given could be given freely? Could I see the hands of those people that would like to have someone like that in their own country to speak out? Yes, I understand, but yes. Oh, I'm sorry, I was elevating you. You understand? I wanted simply to know how many of the members of Parliament would like someone to come from Nicaragua to speak out on what is really happening, but do it honestly and make it a convincing statement to the people.
Yes, we all would, I'm sure. And, we all would, I'm sure, and there would be no problem in arranging such a meeting. Mm-hmm. And when Sir Frederick Bennett comes tomorrow, he's a Privy Councillor and a very senior member, he could be particularly influential in organising such a meeting effectively. As far as the House of Commons is concerned, and I'm sure the Court has too, no problem.
I see. Okay, I just wanted to ask this question because there is someone that is extremely capable to do this type of work if the work were available. Thank you.
I think we'd better begin to draw it to a close. Just a couple more. One in the front first and then one in the back.
Mr. Chairman, General, I would like to put a question to you. We talk about the activities from the Soviet Union or Russia, whichever you like to call it. Some people call it Soviet, some call it Russia, which we should. But would you say what applies to the enemy within, both in your country and in my country, and even in the House of Commons? The enemy within. I mean, I've got a bit of paper in my hand here where a top communist plotting to take over Britain's biggest union and give, this is documentation, of £10,000 for a paper to print their propaganda. That's in Britain today. And we've got the mafia, the Six, in the Transport and General Workers Union. You've got Castro, who is bringing drugs right up to the borderline with the freighters, with the escort, and then the fast motorboats are taking it into America and destroying the youth of America the same as they're doing in this country. And that's Russia. The enemy, we're getting helped within. Could you answer that question, please?
think that was a very good statement of what is taking place, but I'm not sure I understand what the question is. I just have to agree that this is taking place. It's difficult on many occasions to determine what motivates some of our parliamentarians in our various countries. We have members of Congress who admit that they are social democrats or democratic socialists or some combination of that, but they mean that they believe in Marxism, they believe in the socialist movement, they believe that socialism is the wave of the future, and that the best foreign policy for the United States is to make an accommodation with that movement wherever it is. Now we need to expose what that means instead of covering up what is happening in the Soviet Union. And instead of comparing South Korea with the United States, we ought to be comparing South Korea with North Korea. That's the comparison. And when you do that, you recognize that socialism has been a disaster on the Korean peninsula. And I think a part of the campaign that I suggest, a truth campaign, a truth offensive, exposes these people, and you must challenge them. Tell me the name of one country that has benefited, either economically, socially, from the point of view of human rights, from accepting communism or accepting the socialism that you're advocating. And when you challenge them, it's very difficult for them to do that. And I think this is a part of our total program is education, and not to conceal the evil aspects of the communist empire.
Thank you very much. And last to the gentleman at the back, and because we always like to be courteous to the lady in the front. You sir at the back, then one final one from the front.
Mr. President, honorable guest, I would like just to put two questions to the Presidium which are not quite clear. It's a simple terminology, not perhaps any disagreement with the platform or ideas, and I would like to be clarified on one matter which refers to Soviet Empire or Soviet Union, and some people or delegates using the terminology as Russian Empire and Russian imperialism. When I go back to the branch again, naturally I wouldn't know where to start to agitate the people against communism or agitate the people against the Russian Empire. Sometimes I could visualize a stream of water come out of the spring and flow certain miles. You could see the water change in certain color, and then you believe the water is really red or blue or green. Then when you start retreating and going back right to the spring where it comes out, you'll see the water is really clear, and everybody could see it's what the water is. Now, therefore, it puzzles me somehow. I can't see clear how the water looks like. Is it really a Russian imperialism which feeding all the communist uprising, Vietnam, Cambodia, and so on, and in South America now, Cuba and so on, yet standing on the back without using their own advisor, just using Czechoslovakian, as it was said, or East Germany, or anybody from behind the Iron Curtain, even Poles, which I'm pretty certain they wouldn't fight the communism, but they're using them to spray the communism in Latin America, in Asia, in Africa, and so on. Now, if the ideology, the communist ideology, is really believed in the world, I don't think we would be able to stop it. But at the same time, if it's evil which is just some kind buried in nice pink color, if the water is artificially colored pink somewhere on the way down, I suppose we should dispose that and make to the people, to the whole world clear where the evil lies. Does it lie in the simple communist Russian dictatorship and Russian empire, which exposing the aim and feeding and financing, or is the real communist ideology, Marxist and Leninist and so on, which actually driving the people to the aim, to the goal? Well, as long as we don't know which is the real truth, we wouldn't know where to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I think Stefan Terlecki can give a bit of enlightenment on that.
Well, there are so many terminologies and so many empires that one would have to write a book about it. And I'd like to answer it in the next half a minute flat. Namely, it doesn't matter to a certain extent as to whether we use Soviet Empire if it benefits the listeners to accept our argument, to persuade them to reject it, and if it suits the listeners by us saying Soviet instead of Russian, because we can persuade them that much quicker and that much easier, well, use it Soviet. As to the Soviet Union, well, Soviet Union, we know, consists of 272 million people, 15 different republics with its own individual nations, its own language, its own culture, its own religion, its own beliefs, its own history, geography, and so forth. So I think Soviet Union is in a contents that one has to explain what Soviet Union is all about and what Soviet Union embraces. When it comes to the Russian Empire, yes, indeed, it's invariably began and it's maintained within the Russian territory proper, namely Moscow itself. When it comes to the Marxist empire and Leninist empire, that is ideology by the individuals who invented certain ideologies who wanted the world to follow. And regrettably, up till now, to a very great extent, they have succeeded. I feel that when I speak to various individuals or collective groups, my speeches, I use all those terminologies: Soviet Empire, Russian Empire, Soviet Union, Communist Empire, Marxist and Leninist. The main object of it is that we must not be too obstinate, we must not be too dedicated to our own individual ideology to say, it doesn't matter what anybody says, I will always simply say Russia, 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 or Soviet, 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 or Communist, Communist, because if we keep on doing that and persist, then we could have, as against making friends and subordinates and followers, we could, to a degree, have them walking away from us. So it's a matter up to the individuals how they want to terminate the war. But having said that, and I said it earlier on, irrespective what empire, what terminology we use, I personally am saying that it is evil, and the sooner we can get rid of it, the better.
I understand the gentleman who posed the question. I think we have in our program, in our statutes, for what we stand. We are standing for the establishment of national independent democratic states, but how we can get it? Fighting against Soviet Russian imperialism and communism. And this is the safest way, because communism is threatening the whole world. Russian imperialism is now a combination of communism and Russian imperialism, which was also preceding the communist time. We had to do with Russian imperialism before. We had the concentration camps and Siberian camps before the communists came to power. So the safest way, if we say and if we state that we are fighting against Soviet Russian imperialism and communism, because in some countries do not see so on the first already stage that there is Russia involved. They say, oh, they are Cubans, or they are from Czechoslovakia, they are communists, but the whole conquest of the world is mobilized, organized in Moscow, the center of evil, and President Reagan was right when he stated that it's the evil empire. So we are for the dissolution of this evil empire, avoiding the nuclear war through our own strength from inside into national democratic independent states. And I think it is clear and should not be somehow difficulty to understand this.
Thank you very much. The last question from the lady in front, please, then we really must conclude and move to topic.
It is really not a question, it's just a very short comment to General Singlov on the enemy from within. Sir, after coming to here and hearing that, I felt I just had to say it. You've had a very successful conference in Dallas. You had tremendous press coverage. But sir, I believe that your achievement can be best judged by what your enemy said about you. And sir, after reading what your enemy say, you are reaching your goal. Congratulations.
Madam Stetsko has a brief statement to make now.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have still many tickets for the banquet which were not taken by the delegates and our guests. Please, during the coffee break, contact the Secretariat and take those tickets which are for you ready there. Otherwise, some people wanted to be present at the banquet and we refused them because we wanted to guarantee this place for the delegates and guests, and now the tickets are still there. This is the request to go to the Secretariat and take your tickets for the banquet on Sunday evening. The second is Mr. Roman Stuplak, the moderator of the youth panel. He would like to see the panelists during the coffee break here close to the Presidium. He would like to speak to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I declare the sitting closed. Thank once more our guests, in particular General Singlov, on your behalf.
Very good.
Yes, I'll speak if it's
something, you know,
You already remember me because I have this name like him. Party from Spain, not of
I should like to only write you something in my...
She's also a brave woman, isn't she? Jean Kirkpatrick, also a brave woman. My cousin.
one of the task forces named themselves the G task force. And I'm in the process of designing it. And we have a program called Larry McDonald's. I've already
What you said we consider extremely interesting as well. You have said something that we really learn in Spain. Some of the things you said, we didn't really know. The strategic importance of it.
Sweden there is a big information, you know, because those from South America, they are collecting money on the streets, and they are speaking, Mr. Palmer in the head, my tax money is going to Nicaragua, my tax money is going to Vietnam. And you can't say anything, because if you say anything, that's what CIA, I am paid for CIA.
Right. Now, very good. Some friends don't know
Joe Jack, all the best. Safe journey.
Thanks, John.
You're going straight to New York, are you? Then one night there, or
No, I go non-stop from London to Rio, and then I puddle jumper to Ascension.
of course you're going to Paraguay. Okay, well, hope it goes very well. Again,
Thanks,
great to see you. All the very best.
And let me know if you want to go down and
Sure.
visit the
Fine.
Freedom Fight.
Cheers.
Well, I'm traveling. Fundraising events in Phoenix, Tucson, and Brownsville. I'll be in Brownsville 16th to 17th. You go to Houston because I Yeah. Okay, well, I will be there on the 16th, 17th on the fundraiser for the freedom fighters, and you could add a great deal of the program. Okay, you could, my office in Phoenix, those details I don't know as to where it's going to be. Tell take on this as a task capital city to another, and in each place they would have a chance to speak to the Yeah. Let's get out of here so that I can disrupt things.